Welcome to Fairways to Heaven with your host, Christian author and PGA member John Decker. Join John as he discusses all things golf, including useful instructional techniques and tips from your swing to a better game strategy. John will also talk about the importance of his faith and how it relates to his life and golf. So if you're a Christian who loves the game of golf or wants to learn how to play it, then this is the show for you. Now, please welcome the host of Fairways to Heaven, John Decker.
Welcome to the Fairways Heaven Show. I'm your host, John Decker, and we are streaming live on Bold Brave TV. If you miss a show, please go to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you stream your podcast to download a show. Or you can simply go to my website, deckergolf.com. Now, this website is designed to help you as a player. So please go to the website. If you go to the website, I have all of my videos from full swing, putting, chipping, pitching, bunker, course management, and also golf fitness. And the idea with the website is to have a consistent message. So if you're online trying to search for videos and you're hearing messages from different teachers, you're not going to get a consistent message. So give it a try. Go to deckergolf.com. We'd love to have you on there. And there's more information on there about the show and my books as well. Now, I'm excited to announce that Fairways to Heaven is now being broadcast live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So for all of those those out there that follow me on those platforms, social media platforms, welcome to the show. Now, last week's show, I was actually traveling north from Florida back to Ohio, where I am now. But Bold Brave TV ran an encore presentation of the premiere show. So that was last week's show. So my last live show was 2 weeks ago, and that show was show number 6. And the theme of that show was timing. And in that, during that show, I had 2 videos. And in the first video, I talked about the 3 ways to improve your time on the driving range. So when you're actually on the driving range, ways to make your driving range time more productive. And then the second video, I talked about the constant and the variable of the putting stroke. So if you missed that show number 6, go back and watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. Our special guest interview last week, or 2 weeks ago, was the owner and CEO of iGolf Sports Network, and that was Ted Odorico. And I also invite you, if you go to deckergolf.com, or for you to please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and that's John Decker Golf Instruction on YouTube. Now, this show is coming to you live from Columbus, Ohio. I will be here from April through November teaching at the Medallion Country Club. That is in Westerville, Ohio. If you live in the Ohio area, you're welcome to reach out to me. You can go to deckergolf.com, and I'd be glad to work with you if you're in this area. I also will be returning back to Naples, Florida in December through March. So I'll be there teaching at the Dennis Myers Golf School as well. But for those of you who maybe don't live in Florida or don't live in Ohio, if you want online instruction, you can go to deckergolf.com. That information is on there. You'll simply email me a couple of videos, and I'll be able to do an online lesson with you and send you back recommendations of what you can do to make your game better. Now, I'm a PGA member and have been since 1997, senior editor for Golf Tips Magazine, and a Christian author. Now, we want to make this show interactive. I know the numbers are growing on the show because I get the reports every day, and I know that you're out there listening. So if you have questions, please send those, or please call us. And the number is on the screen. It's 1-866-451-1451. Or you can simply go to the live chat and send us a question in. I'd love to answer your questions on the show. If I can't get to it during the show, try to get to it in a future show. Or you can email me. Again, my contact information is on deckergolf.com. Now, today's theme, every show that we have has a theme, and today's theme is the angle of attack, or a lot of teachers will refer to this as angle of approach, but for this show, I'm going to refer to it as the angle of attack. And in segment 1, I've got a video on the short game that'll go over the talking about the different lies that we get and how to change our angle of attack in our short game. And then in segment 2 and in segment 3, I have my special guest and director of instruction for the Scioto Country Club, and that is Don Sargent. And then in the final segment, I'm going to tell you a story about Corey Pavin at the Masters and the spiritual attacks we all deal with on a daily basis. Now, every show that we have here on Fairways to Heaven has scripture, and today's scripture is from Isaiah 54:17. And again, I'm reading this out of the New King James Version. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment, you shall condemn. Now, from day one of the show, my pledge to you, the audience, was this is going to be a Christian golf show, and every show is going to have a heavy emphasis on golf instruction. So let's get right into the golf instruction. Now, today's theme we talked about is the angle of attack. And I like to think of the angle of attack like an airplane approaching the ground. Every time I fly on an airplane, I kind of think of this as I'm landing. When an airplane is coming in, it's not coming in at treetop level. If it did, it would hit power lines, it would hit buildings. And it's also not coming in straight up and down like a helicopter. It's coming in at an approach angle. And the same thing is happening in our golf swing. And we can change our approach angle in our setup and how we swing. You can come in too steep and make deep divots. You can come in too shallow and not make a divot at all. So the approach angle is something that teachers look at with all their students, and it's something that's very important. In getting better is having a good approach angle. Now, in the short game, we have a lot of different clubs that we use. I'm using all kind of wedges. Sometimes I'm using a 7 or 8 iron, depending on the situation. But with my driver, I only use one club really when I'm teeing off, unless I'm going to hit a hybrid or a fairway wood or something and iron off the tee. Typically, I'm teeing off with my driver. So my approach angle is very consistent with my driver. But with the short game, it can vary. So all of this really is dictated on the lies that we get. Sometimes we miss the green and we have a perfect lie, and sometimes we miss the green and we have a terrible lie. So if the lie is going to change my approach angle or my angle of attack when I'm hitting the shot. So in this first video, I'm going to talk about that. And so Caleb, let's go to video number 1, please. Hi, I'm John Decker, Director of Instruction for the Medallion Club and Top 25 Instructor for Golf Tips Magazine, and welcome to Decker Golf. Today I want to work with you on your short game, and I want to talk about club selection, and I want to talk about a term that you may often hear, the angle of approach or angle of attack. If I'm hitting my ball with the driver, I'm teeing the ball up on a tee, and I'm trying to sweep the ball off the tee. So I have a very shallow angle of approach. In fact, I'm actually hitting slightly up on the ball. But when my ball is sitting down in the rough like this ball, I need to come in very steeply. If I come in shallow, I'll blade it. I won't get the ball in the air at all. So I need to come in very steeply. And there's several different things that I do in my setup, but I want to talk more about the club selection. The first thing that you need to do is when you get a bad lie around the greens, you need to go with your most lofted club. And in my case, mine is a 60-degree lob wedge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lob wedge, I'm going to open the face up. This is going to utilize more of the bounce or the back of the club. But the key thing is when I set up, I'm going to set my weight to the left, and I'm going to use a lot of wrist, and I'm going to have a very sharp snap at the bottom. So it's going to be more of a very up to down motion. I'm going to have very little follow through, if any at all. So I've got a bad lie here. All I'm trying to do is pop this ball on the green. I'm going downhill. I've got about, say, 25, 30 feet of green to work with. So I'm going to open the face, lean left. Now watch how I go up, down, just like that. There's a little rotation when I do it. I'm going to open the face and just do it like that. I pop that ball on the green. Ball's going to run down there. I'll take that one every single time, especially out of a bad lie like that. Now I've got a good lie. My ball is sitting up in the grass, let's say. In this situation, my ball, sometimes when you get in the primary rough, your ball is sitting up. You're not always going to be sitting down.
So what I'm going to do now is, because I have a lot of green to work with and I'm going downhill, I'm going to now go with my 56. And instead of coming in steep like this, I'm going to come in more shallow. And I'm going to square the face up. I'm going to lean to my left a little bit, not as much. My feet are closer together. And now I'm just going to have a little more rotation. Notice I'm coming in a little more level and I have a little more follow through. It's not such a steep angle of approach. I'm going to swing it back and have a little rotation just like this. Ooh, that was going a little bit hard. It hit the cup, but again, I would be happy with that one. I carried that ball a little farther than I would like, but overall, I would be happy with that shot. So learn to change your angle of approach. When you get a bad lie, lean left, come in real steep. When you get a good lie, you can come in a little bit more level. You don't have to come in quite as steep. Practice this. Remember, all you're doing is doing it by setting your weight. Steeper, the more you lean to the left, the steeper you'll come in. The more you get 50-50, the shallower you'll come in. Try this the next time you're out practicing, and I guarantee you, you're going to improve your short game.
So one of the things that I would encourage you all to do is, when you're practicing, don't always give yourself bad lies and don't always give yourself good lies. Mix it up. A lot of times when I watch really good players around the greens, they'll just kind of throw the ball around in different areas and they'll play the ball however it lies, because that's what you're going to be doing on the golf course. So that's going to be real important. It's going to really help you a lot around the green if you can learn how to change that angle of approach and good and bad lies. Well, we're coming up on our first break. And when we return to our next segment, we're going to talk more golf instruction with our special guest, Don Sargent. I'm your host, John Decker, and you're watching the Fairways to Heaven show. We'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Fairways to Heaven. I'm your host, John Decker, and now it's time to bring in today's special guest, and that is my good friend, Don Sargent. But before I bring Don on, I just want to give you a brief bio on Don and all of his awards. He's a very accomplished teacher here in our section and really all across the country. Don is the Director of Instruction at the Scioto Country Club. That's here in Columbus, Ohio. He is a newly inducted member of the Southern Ohio PGA Hall of Fame. He is a 5-time Southern Ohio PGA Teacher of the Year, and he is a Golf Magazine Top 100 teacher. Welcome to the Fairways to Heaven show, Sarge.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you on. And, I met you years ago at the PGA show with our good friend, Bill Steins. I remember fondly Bill inviting me over. You guys were in a hotel over there during the show, and I came over and we talked. And then I've gotten to spend a lot of time with you since I moved up here to Ohio, because I was living in Florida at the time. But I want you to talk about your journey as a player, and how you got into teaching, and also how Bill Steins and how he influenced your career as well.
I was really lucky to grow up with someone who loved the game more than anybody I know, which is my father. And he took me everywhere he went his entire life, and he basically sacrificed his life for me, and he taught me the game. And fortunately, he was a good player, and I became a good junior golfer. And, that it was fantastic. Unfortunately, when I was 19, I had a car wreck my freshman year of college, and that derailed my hopes of playing for a living. In my effort of trying to get back to be a player, it made me eventually become a teacher. Somewhere short of that time, I was digging to learn how to play. Bill Steins, our dear friend who I talked to last night, told him, what I was trying to do. And I worked at the honors course in Chattanooga. And I just playing became teaching because I was trying so hard to learn how to play better. I actually got into teaching accidentally, I guess, because I hated the golf shop so much. I'd go to the range and I'd stay there for hours.
Yeah.
That was
anything.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, anything we can do to get outside, right?
I called it the penalty box when I had to be in the golf shop. It was awful.
Yeah.
So I was lucky from there to get hired by some of the greatest teachers, 7 of the greatest teachers. I think that you would know. We all know the greatest teachers in our time, and my search to learn and my ability to be around those incredible guys. Now at 61, I just can't imagine how lucky I was.
Well, you've been blessed, and you're a great blessing to those who come and take a lesson from you. Years ago, it was like a couple years ago, at the Scioto Country Club, where you're the director of instruction, PGA Magazine hosted a Teacher of the Year summit, and I was there, and you were there, and you after the meeting kind of was over, we went outside. You showed us your beautiful facility there. You showed us the outdoor teaching facility that you have, but you also showed us a plaque that was on the driving range. I want you to tell the listeners, first of all, about the history of Scioto and also about that plaque that's on your range.
Scioto Country Club's a very famous place a lot of people don't know about. When it was founded in 1916, they brought in a golf professional who was world famous at that time. His name was George Sargent. Very distantly related to me, but he had won the 1909 U.S. Open. And that was a big deal. And he later became the president of the PGA of America. So when the group of men here, one of which would have been George Herbert Walker Bush's granddad, which is another part of the history here, they hired the best golf professional they could find, which was George Sargent, a U.S. Open champion, president of the USGA. He brought later the 1926 U.S. Open to Scioto, which Bobby Jones won. And as he became the president of the PGA of America, he brought the Ryder Cup there, which was captained by Walter Hagen, And we had the 1950 PGA, the 1968 U.S. Amateur, the 1986 Senior Open, the 2016 Senior Open, and we have the Senior Open coming in 2026, and the U.S. Amateur in 2036. So it's a place where Jack Nicklaus grew up, learned the game. Hall of Fame teacher Jack Grout taught him the game. Um, I tried to be as short as I could, but that was a long list of stuff that's happened.
There's a lot of history there, but tell us about the plaque now. You showed us the plaque. So
Oh, yeah, well, in 1950, he would have been 10 years old. It's a circular plaque that we have put on the driving range. Um, and that is where Jack Nicklaus, A, hit his first golf shot, and B, where he took his first junior golf lesson with Jack Grout and 10 of our members. So anybody that comes to Scioto on the back part of the driving range, you'll find that circular plaque. It's bronze, and it says, here in this spot, Jack Nicklaus in 1950 hit his first golf shot and went on to become the greatest player of all time, something to that effect. And when you stand there and you're our age, John, and you
yeah.
understand the impact that Jack Nicklaus had on golf and Jack Grout as well,
Mm-hmm.
it makes you stand there and think for a second, you know?
Yeah. So right there is where Jack Grout grabbed him by the head and held his head when he was moving. That's pretty special. I was privileged to get a chance to see that. And I've played the Scioto several times. I love the golf course. And Jack Nicklaus is my hero growing up. So that was really special for me to see when we were at the summit there. In the first segment, I talked about the angle of attack. That's kind of the theme for today's show. And you have sent us a video that talks about more of the angle of attack with the driver. So, Caleb, let's go to Don's video now, please.
Every lesson that I give at Scioto Country Club, about 1,800 of them a year, I get the lesson, how do I hit my driver farther? Today we're going to go over some real simple keys that will A, make you hit it farther and make you hit it straighter. We always want to grip the club at the top of the handle. And then we're going to go to take our setup and our aim. When we take our setup and our aim, we want to make sure with the driver that the ball position is plenty forward. Because when we hit it forward, that allows us to hit on an ascending angle. Ascending is critical to hit a driver, to hit it on the upswing, to create the proper launch, and with a minimal amount of spin. So, take our stance and our aim. Ball position should be left heel, left big toe. We waggle and confirm our aim. My head is to the right of the golf ball. I'm going to keep my head behind the golf ball so that I hit it on the upswing with no spin. Just like that, I got 15 more yards and I'm in the center of the fairway.
So I love that video, Sarge, because it really is the opposite of what I was just talking about in the short game, and I don't think people understand that they need to be able to control their angle of approach when they're hitting any shot, because you'll never get a bad lie with a driver. You're going to get a lot of bad lies in the short game and out in the fairway and the roughs and things like that. But having the knowledge to understand that the angle of approach, how important it is. Kind of just, if you want to make any more comments about that, the video that you just did and how important that is, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I've always tried my whole life before TrackMan came along to tell people, most golfers anyway, as you know, that we're trying to learn one golf swing. But really, with data now, we know that golf swings for an iron and a wood are very different. An iron is a descending downward hit, and a driver is an upward ascending hit. And so those two swings are different. And in my opinion, is why nobody has ever been the best player at both irons and woods, because I think we both have a ability to hit one of those better, more upward or more downward.
Exactly.
Short clubs you need to hit down like a wedge, like you said, most of the time. And drivers you need up. Jack Nicklaus, which we spoke of, was the best driver probably of all time, and he was very up on it, but he wasn't. The wedges weren't the best part of his game, and that's probably why.
Exactly. When you're working with a student, one of my favorite stories about angle of approach was from Ben Hogan, and this was years ago when he was at Seminole when he was practicing, and he would hit balls over a tree, and he would hit like wedges, and then he would back up 10 yards and hit 9-iron, and then he'd hit an 8-iron and 7-iron, and he would basically try to get the ball to peak right over that tree, and he would go all the way to the driver. So he had figured out TrackMan before TrackMan was even thought of. He had figured out as far as how high to hit a ball, and it was about 90 feet. If you look at the average of where these tour players are, some are higher, some are lower. But let's just say the average is 90 feet with all of their clubs. Ben Hogan had figured that out back in the 50s. When you're talking about working with a player, as far as their angle of approach on TrackMan, and they're hitting a driver, where do you like to get them when they're hitting up on the ball, and then where do you like to get them number wise when they're hitting down on the ball with the iron? Is there something that you shoot for, or does it depend on the player?
I do. I think it is always player dependent. Um, my general statement would be, I wasn't ready for that question, is I think the average golfer, and when I say average, I might be even talking about a 5 handicapper, which is really a good player, a very good player. I don't think they hit down on their irons enough, and the average golfer does not hit up on their driver enough. So they're caught in between
Yeah.
of probably not being able to be as good of an iron player as they can by being 3 to 5 degrees downward. That's kind of a number I look at. And for driving, I look for if I can get them to dead horizontal and 0 or anything up, I'm thrilled because most high handicap golfers hit up on their irons and down on their driver, and we need to do it just the opposite, in my opinion.
Exactly. And you said something that was very important in that video. The ball position has a lot to do with your angle of attack, and especially with a driver. If you're playing that ball in the middle of your stance, you're going to come in steeply every time. So I like that part of the video. I thought that was very well said. Another thing that you and I have in common is our relationship as a teacher and coach with Bob Sowards. I worked with Bob for 12 years when he was on the PGA Tour and worked with him, and now you're working with him. And I know that when he came to you, when I started with him, he played the ball back in his stance, especially with his wedges, had a lot of knee drive, kind of a quick transition. And so we worked on ball position. We worked on the rotation versus the knee drive. I know that he loves the ground force plates which you use at Scioto Country Club. Talk about your relationship with Bob and the technology that you're using with him and how that's been going.
Well, the first thing is I didn't have to do much with Bob because you had done such a great job with him before.
Thank you.
And I think both of us would agree that it's easy to work with a guy that plays as good as Bob, too. He's incredible.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think Bob learned what I learned as a kid and possibly what you learned because it's what most people learned back in the 80s before we had TrackMan and certainly before we had Swing Catalyst. To hit it more crisply and to compress it more, we all move the ball back in our stance.
Mm-hmm.
And when we move the ball back in your stance, I'm talking to the effects of doing that. Now we de-loft the club. We actually should make the angle of attack steeper because the club is coming down and hasn't had time to shallow out. So now you're hitting it with no loft and steep. So we have to start backing up through impact to create loft, which is probably the most important thing every golfer needs because we all want to hit it in the air. And I think that's where Bob's leg drive and many golfers through the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s had leg drive because if you had ball back to get it in the air, you had to drive your knees forward to try to create lift.
Exactly. And so I think that, if you look at the way the golf swing has changed now, the old school reverse C that you used to see. I remember years ago, I did a clinic with Jerry Pate, who won, he won the Open, U.S. Open. And Jerry was telling me that he had that reverse C finish, and he said by the time I got to 35, I was done. He said my shoulders were tore up, and it's just so hard on your body when you have that reverse C and you're falling back. And I always tell my students who fall back and have that in their swing that, if you can learn to rotate and get your weight more up into your hips when you're finished and not falling back, your career is going to last a lot longer. Well, we're coming up on our second break, and when we return, we're going to have more conversation with Don Sargent. I'm your host, John Decker, and we'll be right back.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Fairways to Heaven. I'm your host, John Decker, and we're talking with the director of instruction at the Scioto Country Club, Mr. Don Sargent. And Don, we've been talking today about the angle of attack. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is I wanted to talk to when we both started playing the game. I started back in 1977. I'm sure you were somewhere around that time. When we were first starting, there was no video analysis. You didn't have any video. I remember the first time I saw my swing on video, I literally wanted to throw up. It wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be. It was at Wake Forest Golf Camp, and that's where I actually met Bill Steins. And so as we've gone through our careers, we've seen technology really change, and obviously there's some good things about technology, and there's some things I think that can be bad as well. But a few years ago, or last year, I did a seminar with some young mentorship program here at the Southern Ohio PGA, and I held a seminar called Teaching Without Technology, and I wanted to teach the young PGA apprentices coming up how to be able to teach a lesson without using video, without using TrackMan, not relying on that, to be able to read ball flight, divots, and all that. How has technology helped golf instruction, and how has it hurt golf instruction, in your opinion?
It's a great, everything you just said was incredible. I heard Butch Harmon one time at the PGA Teaching Coaching Summit suggest to everybody, it wasn't that long ago, for the whole room, there must have been 800 or 900 people. You've been to the summit, you know how that is.
Yeah.
To teach without the TrackMan and without any technology 1 day a week. And I think one of the great advantages you and I have had is we learned how to at least reasonably gauge ball flight without any data. You know, the first time I saw my swing was in those 8 sequence pictures. It wasn't even it was the Polaroids, you know?
Yeah.
So obviously video, which was first, and you and I've grown through all the technological advancements, which I think has helped both of us be better teachers, because you learn to teach without it and teach with it. But I think where technology really gives you the advantage, as they like to say today, is if you can measure it, you should, and if you measure it, do, because I think it keeps us from making mistakes that even video can't see.
Exactly. When I talk to a lot of the young teachers, I said, let's say that you're a personal trainer and I come into you and I am really overweight. Let's say I weigh 300 pounds and my goal is to lose 100 pounds. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to put me on a scale and you're going to measure me. You're going to measure my weight. And then you're going to set forth a plan, and then I'm going to start working out. You're not going to have me do 10 push-ups and then put me back on the same scale. And I think a lot of the times when I watch young teachers teach, they make that mistake of relying so much on they want to take that student and show them their numbers on after every single shot. And the problem is the average student, it just overwhelms them. And I've always said the most important number in golf is your score. That's what matters most, is your score. There's not a number more important than your score. And so if your scores go down, then obviously you're going to be happy and you're going to enjoy the game more. So as a teacher, how do we get students' scores to go down? And I've always believed this is if you went to a teacher and you said, I'm only going to pay you if my scores go down, as a teacher, what would you do? Would you put them on the launch monitor, or would you take them over and work on their short game? I know if I was only going to get paid if your scores could go down, that's probably what I would do. And so I think that's important for the listeners out there. If we're going to become better players, we've got to, focus on, technology is great and there's a lot of great things about it, but don't get so overwhelmed when you're watching golf on TV and all they're talking about are the numbers. Focus on that score. That's what really matters. Any comments on that?
I don't like to think of myself as a salesman, but people sometimes in conversations like you do will say, well, I don't know. I've had golf lessons from everybody. Can you really make my score go down? And I'll say I could take 5 strokes around off your game, assuming this guy's not a scratch player.
Yeah.
And the first thing I teach them is that we're going to go to short game. And the second thing I teach them is we're going to leave your sand wedge in the bag 90% of the time, because everybody falls in love with hitting lofted lob shots that they see on TV. But what they don't realize is those players are hitting 500 of those shots a day. There's a possibility those players may have more talent than you and I have at the same time.
Yes.
Uh, Playing the ball close to the ground for any club golfer with a 7-iron and a 9-iron, that's the first 2 clubs I always try to use. I think if you use a 7 and a 9 and learn how to be just decent at that, you take 5 strokes around off your scorecard.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, the game was designed to be played on the ground. I don't like courses that are always forced carry courses. That's what I love about Scioto is there's a lot of chipping. Chipping is the lost art in golf. I love that if you're watching the Masters this week, you're going to see a lot of chipping. You're going to see a lot of guys putting from off the green because they're so tightly mowed. There's not a heavy rough there. So I think that's a great point, Sarge. Let's talk about go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think most people couldn't tell you the difference between a pitch and a chip, and that even includes what I hear on TV oftentimes.
Yeah.
What is a chip and what is a pitch? And we don't need to pitch, and we need to learn to chip, because chipping is close to the ground and pitching is high in the air.
Exactly. Now, I am going to talk a little technology with you now because I know that you use TrackMan at Scioto. Let's say that you're working. First of all, we're going to do this old school versus new school. You're going to work with a slicer and you're going to have no technology at all. So you're just working with on the range. Talk about how you go through that lesson with your average slicer.
I try to analyze what I see, but and it's been helped by technology, but I know if the ball starts to the right of the target, the face is open.
Mm-hmm.
And what I also learned through technology, if the face is open, every golfer is going to swing to the left, trying to close the face. So if you have an open face and you swing to the left, you're going to more than likely make the ball curve to the right. That's what I think that's what TrackMan has taught us. What makes the ball do what it does. So an open face makes the ball start right. A left path makes it spin further right. And so my first analysis is, where is the face getting open? And the next 90% of all my lessons is it's usually in a weak left hand grip.
No doubt about it. That is number one thing that you have to look at when you're dealing with a slicer. I see so many teachers trying to work on path and they don't change the grip, and I'm like, you're setting this guy up for a shank. I mean, you have got to fix the grip first. That is number one. So that's exactly right. Now you've got that same slicer, but you've got them on TrackMan. So let's talk about the numbers that you would see on a typical slicer using TrackMan.
Club face 3 to 5 degrees open, or a positive number when you're reading TrackMan, and path 3 or 4, 5, 6, or 7 to the left.
Yeah.
So if you're swinging left with an open face, and I describe it as ping pong, okay, if you're hitting a cut or a drop volley in any paddle sport, that's what makes it curve to the right. That's the same swing that you're making when you're playing around a golf, hitting a slice.
Exactly. And with those, when you're working with a student and you've got them on TrackMan, because I don't use launch monitors a lot when I teach. I use them more in fitting when I've done fitting, but when I'm teaching, I don't like to use a lot of numbers like that. I like to get more to the root of the problem. Again, trying to get them things that I know that they can take out on the golf course. I know them knowing their numbers is good, but that's not going to help them when they go play golf. And so I'm always trying to get to that part taken care of. But when you're working with someone and you're making these changes, in their grip and with the numbers that you see, what kind of do you find like struggles when you're working with them as far as how they interpret the information or how they take it on the golf course? Is that something that you find with your students?
I think young players, I can't say young players, but people get too hung into the numbers. They think it has to be perfect to be good. I use the numbers for me when I'm teaching for my students is just to validate what I tell them, because it's
Yeah.
amazing how many don't trust necessarily what you are telling them. And so I use it to validate, and then I use it. So oftentimes I have my TV on a swivel. It's on a post that swivels. I just turn the TV where they can't see it. And then
Yeah.
maybe minutes, I'll turn it back and say, well, look, now you've gone from 4 degrees open to square or 1 degree closed. So
Yeah.
just make them feel better about the improvement they're making. But yeah, I think the numbers, in fact, especially with young kids, they won't even go play golf if they're not swinging good,
Yeah.
And that's a lesson you got to learn in itself, because like you growing up playing tournaments and whatever, we didn't know how many days we went to the range that we were swinging crappy, but we learned how to shoot a good score.
Yeah.
And that's do in golf is, like you said, you have to shoot a score. Whether you're swinging good or bad, you got to make a number come up.
Exactly. Well, one of the things that with this show, this is the Fairways to Heaven show, so we talk a little bit about faith as well. And I know that you're a Christian, and we've been talking today about the angle of attack. But when the enemy attacks us, and this can happen on the golf course for anyone really when you're playing the game, but when the enemy attacks you personally, how has your faith helped you during those difficult times of your life?
I'll make this very short, but I grew up going to church, and would have called myself a Christian. After I went to college, and for a long period of time, I wandered in my walk, if you want to call it that. And my walk got far more crooked than I realized. And March 11th of 2022, had an event come up in my life. And that was the day that my life changed. And I truly became a Christian and truly began trying to walk the walk rather than saying that I was walking the walk. And now I'm in church every Sunday. I do Tuesday morning Bible study at 6 o'clock, and Wednesday night I do another Bible study with my pastor. But I try to reference scripture that I've learned. I have a bracelet on even as we speak right now. Um, I have a statue of Jesus Christ on my desk, but I try to refer to the scripture uh, and try to do the best I can at becoming a true Christian and not a faux Christian, if you want to call it that.
That's amazing, and I really appreciate you, opening up about that and to the audience, because I know it's not always easy to admit that, because I've backslid so many times. It's part. I think we all go through these periods in our life. Well, this is Masters Week, and so I've got to ask you before you get off here, who's your pick this week?
Everybody's on Rory this week because he's played incredible this year. But I did see a stat yesterday. The guy I'm going to give you is of this stat is Scotty Scheffler, because I didn't know it because everybody thinks Scotty's not playing good this year. But Scotty's got the second lowest stroke average of anybody on tour right now. And I think Scotty hasn't won, and I think it makes it simpler for him because he doesn't have all that pressure. Last year he had won 4 or 5 times coming in. I still think he's the best player, and that's who I have to bet my money on.
Well, that's a great bet. All right, I'm going to get 2 quick questions, and I got to let you go. If you've got one round of golf to play the rest of your life, only one round of golf, where are you going to play?
The only place that I haven't played that I want to play, St. Andrews.
St. Andrews. And who is your foursome? You can play with a foursome, and it could be anyone alive or dead.
My father, who taught me the game, who's the best friend I have in my life. Ben Hogan. Wow. And well, the guy who got me into teaching really was Nick Faldo, but it would be a coin toss between Nick Faldo and Bobby Jones.
Wow.
So Nick Faldo, Ben Hogan, I'm playing a fivesome.
Well, I would say Bobby Jones over Nick Faldo, because you can still play with Nick Faldo, but you can't play with Bobby Jones. So as of right now, so that's a good bet.
I think Mr. Jones is so forgotten, and people have no idea at how great he was in more than just golf. He was incredible.
Sarge, thank you for coming on the show. I'm going to have you on again, and we'll try to do something out at Sode. I can't wait to see the new facility out there. But thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate you.
All right. It's time for our final break. And speaking of the Masters, I want to talk to you when we come back from the break about a story of Corey Pavin on hole number 16 at the Masters. You're watching Fairways to Heaven. I'm your host, John Decker. We'll be right back.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, Radio show host and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to the Fairways to Heaven show. I'm on Bowl Brave TV. I'm your host, John Decker. And a special thank you to the Director of Instruction for the Scioto Country Club, Don Sargent. He did a great job today, but thank you for coming on the show this week, Don. Now I want to talk to you about a story about Corey Pavin at the Masters. This is Masters week, and so I really thought this story would be a great story to talk about. And I actually got this story from Bob Rotella's book, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. And Rotella was conducting a seminar for the PGA members. And this was in, I think, 1987 or 1988. And Corey Pavin was at the seminar along with other tour players. And Rotella was talking about the power of the mind. And the mind and how the mind doesn't understand the word don't. Okay, so think about this. If I'm driving down the road in my car, I don't look off to the right or left and go, don't go to the right or don't go to the left. I look at the road, and if the road turns to the right, I steer to the right. If the road turns to the left, I steer to the left. I don't think about where I don't want to go. I think about where I want to go. So Rotella is doing this seminar. At the very end, Corey Pavin raises his hand and stands up and talks about what happened to him at Augusta in the previous year in 1986. Now, the 1986 Masters is famous because that's where Jack Nicklaus won his 18th major. He won his 6th green jacket, and he at the age of 46. So everybody, when they think of the 1986 Masters, that's what they think about. They don't think about what Corey Pavin did. Now, Corey Pavin on Saturday came to hole number 15 and made an eagle on 15, the par 5. He gets on hole number 16, and there's par 3, water's on the left, hits the ball into the water on the left. The next day on Sunday, he makes an eagle on 15 again. So he's eagled 15 2 days in a row. He's walking to 16 tee box, tied for the lead. He's standing there, he tees the ball up, and he says over the ball, as he's standing over the ball, he told himself mentally, don't hit it in the water. Of course, he hits the ball in the water and makes double bogey. And what's interesting is Rotella says that when you say to yourself, don't hit it in the water, your brain doesn't understand the word don't. So if it doesn't understand the word don't, you're basically telling yourself to hit it into the water. Now, first of all, I think it took a lot of courage for Corey Pavin to stand up and actually admit this. Because I think we've all have done this, but I would have a hard time standing up in front of my peers and admitting this. And so Pavin went on and had learned from this experience that he went through. And who knows, maybe had a lot to do with the seminar that he went through with Bob Rotella. But he went on to win the 1995 U.S. Open. And so I'm sure that when he got to the U.S. Open in 1995, he mentally was in a lot better place and was able to deal with the pressure of playing in a major tournament and being right there in the lead. Now, we as human beings are under attack spiritually every single day. I believe in God, and I also believe that there is a devil, Satan. And I know that every day of my life, there is spiritual warfare going on in my mind and my heart. I'm attacked spiritually every single day. And it could be through social media. It could be through work. It could be through just all kinds of things that I see on the news. It could be, there's a lot of different attacks that we get every single day. For example, over the last week or two, we've all experienced, the stock market has gone down. And a lot of us get a lot of spiritual attacks. You're not going to have enough money. You're not going to be able to make it. Things are not going to work out. So these spiritual attacks are happening to us every single day. The problem is most of us are in a war and we don't have a weapon. We don't have a way of fighting back. Well, Scripture is my weapon. And one of my favorite verses is Isaiah 54:17. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Now, what I love about this is when it says every tongue which rises against you in judgment, that's Satan coming at you with these negative attacks. By having that scripture, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. That is my weapon for these spiritual attacks. So I would encourage all of you to memorize scripture. It doesn't have to be Isaiah 54:17. You may have a verse that you love. It could be one verse. Don mentioned he has a verse on his wrist. Whatever it is, have that scripture so that when these spiritual attacks start coming at you, you read them, you say them, and you will stand firm and win that war. It's funny because a couple of years ago, I was at church and I saw a girl that was wearing a t-shirt and it said, "Not today, Satan." And I thought, what a great shirt to have. Not today, Satan. So when Satan's coming at you, you have that scripture, you have something to fall back on. Because if you're going to go to war, you better have a weapon. And scripture is your weapon. And the mind and the heart is where Satan attacks. Use that scripture and he will flee. You must have it though, and you must be ready to use it. Well, once again, we've reached the 18th hole of today's episode. Thank you for watching the Fairways to Heaven show on Bold Brave TV. We'll see you next week when once again we glorify God through the game of golf, one show at a time. Until next time, I'm your host, John Decker. God bless.
This has been Fairways to Heaven with host John Decker. Tune in each week for the very best in the game of golf, including fundamentals and solid game advice that John will share for a better and more satisfying game. Wednesdays, 9 a.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.